A group hoping to connect younger veterans is filming a promotional video in the Fox Valley today.
Missions of Honor was launched this year and will partner with the 9/11 Memorial Museum in New York City to recruit for flights there and provide information on resources, including help for PTSD. Only on Action 2 News, Jason Zimmerman spoke to those behind the effort and what it could mean for veterans.
Well, many people are familiar with the Old Glory Honor flights, which bring local veterans to the nation's capital from the Appleton International Airport. A spin-off organization called Missions of Honor hopes to be just as successful.
Missions of Honor is really starting to focus on our younger veterans. So our Desert Shield, Desert Storm veterans, our GWAT veterans, and what can we do for them? And one thing we've taken from Old Glory Honor flight is the impact, even just a day of veterans being with other veterans, what that can have on them.
The focus on the new organization will be on larger missions, including flights to New York City, announcing a partnership with the 9/11 Memorial Museum, which will spotlight a promotional video of veterans from the Fox Valley who made the trip last fall as part of an Old Glory Honor flight called the Freedom to Liberty Tour. Action 2 News documented the journey. At the time, Lenny DeJesus was coping with PTSD like so many other veterans.
You are worthy. You served, you went to places, and you were in combat or imminent danger places, and this trip will definitely help you heal.
Unfortunately, I've had friends that died in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and have since died by suicide. And you'll never understand any of that, right? But at least it gives you somewhat of a little bit of closure.
Since the 9/11 Memorial Museum offers resources for veterans with PTSD who might be coping with thoughts of suicide, organizers say this mission has never been so important.
So many veterans are taking their own lives, and they're suffering in silence, and if we can do any little piece to try and help that, that's what we want to do.
Applications for the next mission flight in September being accepted through June 15th at freedomtoliberty.org. Reporting in Grand Chute, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.